Warms my heart, this book. How's that for a
Well,
transition?
you need something.
Yeah. So I love how let's see, I believe that would have been, it was the first chapter in this section here. So what had that been? Six, sort of. Basically, this line here is they were talking about at Pixar when they're onboarding people and creating of the culture. The line specifically doesn't matter if you're coming in to actually be a director or be a barista in the cafe there. The line of on day one's orientation, you are all in the filmmaking business. Like, and just the different examples there that it gave of buying in the culture of here's you're a part of this team. They talked about with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And when they go there, the first thing they do is they take those players day one orientation when you're crossing that threshold and you're as fresh as you possibly are ever going to be at a new place. And they take them to the memorial for the Oklahoma City bombing and they point out to the stands of like there's still numerous fans in this crowd that were impacted by the 168 people lost on that day and just what it really means playing for this community and just other little things like that. But like I said, that Pixar one specifically, so I've been brainstorming and thinking ever since I read that the other day of just how could I do that for day one on somebody of just it doesn't matter. The line specifically before it was, it doesn't matter what you did before this. You are now in the film industry. So again, trying to figure out, it doesn't matter what you did before us. You're now the protector of dreams or whatever. I don't know. I'll come up with something goofy for that, like for the insurance industry. But something along those lines, like this is what you are now. You're a part of this team. This is what we're doing, and here's where we're going. So I absolutely love that piece out of it. There was another one is when it was talking about this was at the start of chapter, was it nine? Let me pull it back up. There was those different questions for where it talks about the two different sets of questions. And when you looked at maybe it was eight. Hold on a second here. But in the vulnerability loop, yeah. What is, they had the different ones, for example, like under set A, what's the best gift you ever received and why? Versus set B. If a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, your future, or anything else, what would you want to know? And they have those different variations of the questions there. Now, I actually have an interview with an individual today. And what's fun is I actually was like, what would be some fun ways to mix up this besides this interview to bring somebody on board? Let's ask some of these questions, see how it goes. Besides, tell me about yourself. What have you done before? Overcome objections, all that other stuff. Let's throw some of these in here and just helping break down the walls and making like this is all about creating the safe spaces and just really trying to get to know somebody and using those specific types of questions as they allude in there are going to help you break that down and to really try and see and if somebody's going to open up and really should they be a part of the team or not, like are they going to trust you? uh I have enjoyed the different stories through here as far like that plane. Are you kidding me? Like I was on the edge of my seat. Like at first did they land the plane? And then as I was going through, it's like, oh yeah, obviously they're talking to some of these people, and as witnesses recount, there's no way they would have known. So it's like, okay, good, they're going to successfully survive this. But how did they ultimately survive it? Even after they simulated that plane crash later, every other group that they brought through there crashed. They couldn't figure it out. But they had that right dynamic of people that nobody was trying to take charge and be like, I need help. And the guy's like, I'm here to help. Just tell me what you need. And just using those, like how they communicated in arguably a true life or death situation and what they were able to do and land that plane safely when so many other skilled pilots simulated couldn't do it. What they did in the moment is truly impressive. And as it talked about in I think it was the final chapter of this section here, I loved the SEAL Team Six analogy with Coop. And he was so like, he kept flashing back to New Year's Eve and he ended up in that horrible situation because he didn't trust his gut and he didn't challenge. There was that open communication. And then when they're getting this information, this intel that they're going after Osama bin Laden. Okay, I like the idea of stealth helicopters, but they haven't been tested. Should we really be using this? And then the decision made is we use this. Fine. If we're using these, we're going to practice every possible scenario in case these things go down. And what happened? One goes down. And what happens? The mission still goes off successfully. Why? Because they practiced, they prepared, they trained. And just as it's talking about the culture of a SEAL team, I love those stories. Like, because we've read some of those other books with what's his the he's now the runner, Dave Goggins. So he talked about his time in SEAL training. So it's kind of a fun flashback to when we read his book of where did the ridiculous SEAL team training come into play? this guy from was it Kaufman
Mhm.
from in the 30s created this. Ultimately, what they ended up using in World War II, but ultimately where it's going in and how those SEAL teams work together. And his example, yeah, there's me and this Army Ranger captain or whatever, as we're watching our two teams work, and he's sitting there shouting commands and orders to his guys the whole time. And yet he's sitting there talking. Why? He doesn't need to. It's just so ingrained in their culture of what they do that they are able to work without verbal communication, but still accomplish like that is a true trust and reliance on everybody. And I'm enjoying this book. It is as expressive. There's so many different ways that I look at like putting past situations through the prism of this here now. How could things been better or worse? Or times where I realized, hey, this actually worked because, hey, unconsciously did something that this book is talking about. But just to create those better relationships, I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying it. It's good stuff. So go ahead, do it, lady.
Oh, it's my turn. I always
She's still on thawing, Chris.
yeah. Hmm. Um, yeah, I have liked the book. I'm kind of bits and pieces and jumping around because I think I fell asleep while I was listening to it last
You
night.
did.
So I was like listening to it this morning and going through it.
Chris,
Um,
you're not supposed to call her out like that.
She called herself out. I just affirmed.
just
You
I
just confirmed.
a pumpkin after 10 o'clock. And so that's just not my best brain time. Um,
It was cute. She had her head on my shoulders. We were reading the book and listening, and then I was 6 I just hear this like, "Oof," and I'm like, "You're woofing." She's like, "What?" No, I'm not. I'm awake. A couple minutes later. Oof. All right. Yeah.
okay.
Just let us sleep.
Um,
Cool.
I have really been kind of like thinking a lot about the vulnerability piece, right? Where they say like the vulnerability is it's not weakness, it's the fastest way to building trust with your team and people. And it's interesting as I've been like kind of reading how he's saying this. And I think for me, I grew up in a very like military, like standard family to where vulnerability was weakness. And so as I grew up, it was, you don't share your feelings, you don't mix your emotions and feelings with anything business or professional. You can't show emotion, it's weakness, right? You can't show vulnerability, it's weakness. And so like I remember different times in my journey and career through having jobs and working myself through positions where feedback was a lot of you need to be vulnerable with your team. They need to see that you have weakness. And I'm like, that's not how I was raised. I don't show my weakness. To where I did start to kind of practice that vulnerability and sharing and things like that. However, I feel like there were times I shared vulnerabilities with people I trusted that kind of turned around and turned it against me to where then I was like, see, this is why I'm not vulnerable with anybody. Um, and so this book has me kind of like rethinking that is, was I vulnerable at, like it says here, right? Vulnerability starts before trust. It helps build that trust. So was I just kind of assuming I'm trusting these individuals and I didn't kind of create that trust in the I don't know the right way or anything like that. But anyways, I'm intrigued by the vulnerability piece, I think, just because I've kind of done it different. I don't know how to really phrase it, but yeah, it's been interesting to read that and kind of go through that and kind of reminisce on, oh man, I remember the times I was not vulnerable. And maybe that did impact my relationship with my teams that I was building. And when I was receiving feedback and how I could change that. And it's really hard when your innate personality has never been open to those things, right? To almost turn around and be like, vulnerability, I don't even know what that means. How do I do this? And so just from that like authenticity side of things, yeah, it's just got my brain going and thinking through, are there ways that I can now be vulnerable as I'm building a team and things like that? What does that look like? How can I do it to where it doesn't look or feel forced, but authentic in a way in situations? So I don't know. That's where I'm at. Good book.
Very good.
Well, I'll jump
I
in there
have,
really
well, you know
quick.
what? I'm going to make a couple comments real quick on it, just what you said, Crystal. I think, when I read that and what I'm hearing you say is that vulnerability in the wrong hands could damage and close you off to being vulnerable, right? So I think a lot of people might see that as a weakness, but I think they're weak. And so it makes them look better if you're vulnerable or, and even in relationships, like people that are vulnerable in relationships and they've done it several times and they've been burnt, all of a sudden they're not vulnerable anymore and they're closed off to their emotions. Same thing at work. If you're one of the things that I read in the book that, inside of me, I'm a perfectionist. But I don't mind exposing my mistakes to my team in the past, and Lola Justin, like, because I'm not perfect, right? And so if I get called out on something, I'll be the first to, admit it, but it freaking kills me on the inside, right? Because I start thinking about how do I look? Like, did I lose respect for my team? Does my team see me differently? And then, based on what he is saying is actually in the right hands, the right people in the right bus, working for you that support you and are loyal to you, that vulnerability actually is a plus. So I think that's, my biggest takeaway is if you're vulnerable and someone kind of takes advantage of that, then one, that person probably shouldn't be in your circle or be in your life or be in your business. And then, but don't allow that to not make you vulnerable with other people because in the right hands, I think it takes the relationship to the next level and builds this level of trust that you can't build without being vulnerable. That's kind of what my takeaway from that was and what I think. So I think that's what you're kind of saying really is
Yeah.
what's kind of happened. You were vulnerable and then it worked against you versus working for you. But then also when we're trying to be perfect, people can sniff that out and that's inauthentic because no one's perfect, right? Everyone makes mistakes.
Well, I didn't realize last week because I know last week I said that, oh, it's so repetitive or blah blah blah. But because I realized it's going by a theme, right? Because when I finally made it to this one, I was like, oh, these next 4 or 5 chapters are going to be about vulnerability. That's why it's so repetitive. But I did like it. Um, I love the story with the Navy SEALs. Like Chris mentioned, I don't have to communicate with my team. They know what to do, and the reason they know what to do is because after every single mission, they had said before is that they have like an after action meeting where ranks don't matter, levels, whatever, they don't matter. Everyone goes around and says, like, what could we have done better? Where did we go wrong? How can we improve it next time? How do we communicate? Maybe they have like signals or tells or whatever. What are some new signals or tells or different ones that we can implement that when we look at each other and like we blink 5 times in a row or whatever, it means this, that, and the third, where the communication from the leader watching from the drone or whatever is not needed. They are amongst each other's like, hey, we already go through this. Any after action, let's just get the mission done. And whatever fails, instead of like being down each other's necks there during the mission, like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. They know they're gonna have that conversation after. Which I love that because not just in something like the Navy SEALs, but like in any aspect of life, I actually have written down on the side of it, have the difficult conversations. And that's something that I talk to with like my partner sometimes, right? I guess in any other relationship that I've ever been in, I never bothered to have difficult conversations because I maybe didn't care enough, right? Like I'm like, whatever. Like this isn't going anywhere, so I'm not gonna have these conversations. But because this relationship, I care about it, and when we do have difficult conversations, it's so uncomfortable because we're not used to it. But then I'll have to tell them, hey, we have to have these difficult conversations because it makes us better, right? Or these uncomfortable conversations, like I'm sweating, like I don't like it, but it makes us better. And then we talk less or disagree less because we have these kind of like powwows. Hey, how could I have been a better girlfriend this week? Or how can I blah blah blah, whatever the case is. So I really liked it. I also liked the story about um the pilot, I think it was where he's like trying to do everything himself. I got it, I got it, I got it. And then he later on admits like those were like the dumbest things I could have ever said. I got it, I got it, I got it. And the reason why him, his team, and everyone on the plane was safe was because of 4 words. Anyone have any ideas? And then that will start sparking the conversation, like, well, maybe this, that, or whatever. So I'm really like it. And now that I know what's going on, I like that it's like, segmented into each chapter being kind of the same thing because it reinforces the idea before moving on to something else. So like it.
I'll jump. Uh, Good morning, everybody. Uh, a couple things struck me. I felt very validated in terms of my previous management style and integrating vulnerability and practicing over and over and over, sort of in that drone situation, because in previous work life, I was very good friends and worked with Morris Bradshaw, the former wide receiver of the Oakland Raiders. And he and I worked together, and we would go on sales calls together and spot each other. And, he was wearing his Super Bowl ring with John Madden that one year with, all that back in the early 80s. And he would tell me about how the 49ers, I don't want to get too much into sports here, but how the 49ers practiced in the 84 Super Bowl that they played at Stanford versus Miami against the Dolphins. And because the defense had the killer bees, the linebackers, and how the Niners practiced over and over and over, not getting off the field. And so I've categorized this in my mind as in reading this. Sometimes we just can't get off the field. You have to play while you're on the field. And Morris would talk to me about this and said the only way that they were able to counter the killer bees was because they knew what to do, not getting off the field. And so it was really, really interesting. And so I resonated with all of this because it has been what I've done in the past. And to Jay's point, being vulnerable, even if a mistake is made or something, as we integrate ourselves into our teams, speaking the truth is not a bad thing. It's a healing thing for us. And without all the psychotherapy that goes with it, I suppose. But I'm just being a little funny this morning. But I mean, I think that being vulnerable to a team, to the people that are relating and reporting to you, is a good thing. It's not just about saying, well, I know I made a mistake, forgive me, or it went this way. It's really about setting a boundary, because when you have a team and you have a short amount of time and you need to relate to them about whatever went and fell on the floor and broke, and it's in a repair mode, you have to be vulnerable about it. I mean, I had a conversation this morning, I'm going off a little bit here, but in Florida with some vacation services, I inputted some information and it didn't make it to the actual record in reservation. And so I said, so what fell on the floor and broke? And the young man said to me, I have to tell you, you did everything correctly. I love what he said. You did everything correctly, Mr. Gagosian. It's the records digitally that never made it from one system to the other. We take ownership for that. And thank you for your patience. And that was it. So to end this, to put the plane on the ground, one of my book suggestions from a very good and wonderful personal friend is from Dr. John Townsend out of Irvine, California, with his best-selling with Dr. Henry Cloud, Boundaries. It seems that there's a lot of conversation just so far in the midst about being in groups of people and in relationship with people about having boundaries and what that really, really constitutes. Because if we're reading about being vulnerable in the workplace and at home and in relationship and just, going to the grocery store. You don't necessarily wear your personal life on your sleeve and tell everybody at every moment because there has to be safe people in your life and people, but in a lot of situations you don't know. So there's ways in which, so if that's my suggestion, somewhere down the road, if you want to read boundaries, um, and I can call John, maybe, we can get some autographs or something. But anyway, down the road. But that's it. I mean, I saw the amazing things about vulnerability, and then the special ops. Those guys are trained to jump out of the back together in synchronized fashion out of the back of a plane into countries that, because they're depending on the guy next to them and they're depending on the people behind them, and their captain that's going to be going out the back door, with 90 pounds and a gun on his back as well. So there's a lot in the trust mixture that I just really appreciated that section so much. So
Hey
I'll jump in.
everybody. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This will be quick. I'm further behind. I'm glad it gets better. So, I think the topic seems very good and interesting, but the audio version, which is all I've been doing, leaves a little to be desired. That it's not as compelling. A lot of times I'm in the gym and I'll listen. I'm like, no, 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 no. This will put me to. So I am good to that. I'm glad to hear that I like the stories so far, but I'm glad to hear it picks up. So I've enjoyed your guys' comments, and we'll have something to contribute once I'm deeper in, and it hits me a little more. There's a little more resonance for me. So continue. This is enjoyable for me.
No worries, no worries. So hey everybody. So I'll jump in. So I know I missed last week, so I'm not sure, and I don't want to repeat what was said or make anybody
I
feel.
thought you were trying to miss this week too.
I tried. I was like, oh God, Christians, just please talk for 5 more minutes. Please do me a favor. Let's talk about
You
numbers
just
for
gotta,
five
you
more
gotta control
minutes.
Christian. You gotta coach Christian.
Yeah, so I apologize for missing last week. But I have to admit, I don't know what it was said about how you guys all feel about the book, but I don't love this book. I'm gonna be honest. I just don't, I think it's kind of boring, if I say. I don't know. I'm finding it difficult to kind of stay focused on this one. It's just, I guess for me, I guess I go everything back to corporate America. Like I almost think that some of the things are just common sense, I guess, in a way, and then some other things are just a little bit like I don't understand where he's going with this. I guess I'm not really connecting all the pieces to everything. There were a few things I liked from this second part from this next 75 pages that we went over. But I think I heard the tail end of what a few of you said, and I think some of it kind of repeats. But I do like how he talks about, these high performing groups, they have simple behavioral signals, like almost like traffic lights. And it's like the Navy SEALs during their missions, and then how Pixar has those meetings after they put out a movie and they talk about what they hated about it, excuse me, what's terrible about it. And I think that it can, I mean, it sounds like it would be a horrible meeting to be in, but it sounds like it obviously serves a purpose. We did something similar at Amex a long time ago, but it definitely did not go well. So we stopped doing it pretty quickly. And that was about getting presentations ready for anybody that we were meeting with at a certain level. But I think that the purpose of it makes sense, but maybe how you enforce it maybe can really go awry really quickly if you don't do it the right way. But the other part was talking about how the successful groups they over communicate priorities. And I thought that was also, I think somebody else was talking about this when I came on, but you can't really talk about one thing. You can't hear something once and then talk about it and think that they're going to remember it every single time. So it has to become instinctive, right? So it has to become something that you hear all the time. But I thought that was interesting because where leaders, I think, they worry a lot about sounding repetitive and about sounding like a broken record. But if you don't repeat the things that are important, you don't understand what's the most important piece of it. And that kind of led into the next part about priorities, because if it's not, like if you can't name it, you can't think about it, then you never heard about it, then it's not a priority. And if everything becomes a priority, then everything's a priority and nothing really is a priority at the end of the day. So there has to be a kind of way to break it down, and I think that that kind of went with some of the examples he gave, like Johnson and Johnson, and I think there was one more. It was like a hospital. I can't remember the name of it all of a sudden. But I think so. When he went through that, I thought that was part was interesting as well. And then where did I put my notes here? Oh, so he talked about leaders and how they absorb blame and share credit also, which I thought was very interesting because at Amex, we were taught, and as we went up in ranks there, that the leader is responsible for everything. So you accept responsibility and you take responsibility. So, and then you enforce responsibility. So I thought this was interesting because it's a great way. I always felt like you give people kudos, but you also take responsibility and you share in that because you are a group at the end of the day. And I think that that puts a lot of trust in everybody that you are for your team. You're not just out for yourself. And I think that can really make somebody trust you or not want to be with you. And that's not going to work out for you in the end anyway. And it was sharing that spotlight, right? Um, and then the other part that he mentioned in here also was talking about people can build, leaders can build purpose by obsessing over the smallest details of a group identity. And I thought that was pretty significant because there's cultures that treat every detail as a signal, but other people may treat it a little bit differently. So it can create miscommunication instead of a clear communication. And then how decisions get made from that is what's really important because they can feel trivial. And I think that could shape people in and out of the group and whether or not they want to actually be part of that group. But I basically kind of felt like, I guess to wrap that up, was really more or less that it's really culture can be built on actions from what people can see and language that you can repeat. So I thought that was interesting, but again, I'm just finding it hard to kind of go through this book a little bit just for me. But overall, I think these are great things that you should learn throughout a professional life and in life in general. So that was my two piece.
Well, I guess that leaves me. I'm not sure. Sorry for being late. I, you
Go ahead,
know,
Michelle.
I'm resonating with so many different things. Crystal's experience about being vulnerable and it backfiring, and also Justin, I feel the same way about the book. I feel like I think also because after reading Diary of a CEO, where I was just like eating it up, and this one I'm just sort of like, oh yeah, I better read, and,
It's a
and
harsh
I'm just sort
contrast.
of.
I would third that comment. It's a big pivot.
Yeah, it's like, poof, and so it's, um, and also I resonate with what Lola was saying in terms of the stories and also kind of figuring out, oh, um, I feel like he could get to it sooner. I don't mind stories, but also sometimes I'm lost in the stories. I'm like, and the point is, okay, I don't know. Um, which I guess is okay, but I don't know. I love the format of Diary of a CEO because it's just like short, boom, 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 boom. Here's your summary, ready to go. You know. However, as I'm, getting along in the book and I'm seeing like, oh, he's building something. Not that it's obvious, but it's at the beginning he talked about safety. And it's like, oh yeah, that is so, so important. And then there's that part about belonging, super, super important. And then he talks about trust. Wow, is that important? And then he talks about vulnerability. And it's just like, okay, I'm ready for vulnerability because I couldn't hear any talk about vulnerability unless there's a foundation of trust. Or foundation of safety first, period. And then the trust, and then that sense of belonging. And so it's like as it evolves, I'm kind of going, oh, here's where he's going. I see the steps going now. Um, took me a minute to just figure out because I was like, huh, you know. So appreciate that. Um, I also, and I guess, spinning it, it's like, that's good that it's making me think and like, how is this connecting all the different things that he's saying and all the different stories? I think sometimes the stories are so different that it's hard to find the through line, um, because there's so many different examples of the one thing he's saying. Well, however, the way my brain goes, I'm always trying to find the connectors. It's just like there's all these stories. Where's the through line piece? And for me, it like regarding the whole vulnerability and also some things that I've experienced in different social settings, groups, teams, etc., that vulnerability works when there are no labels and no titles. When all those roles are put aside, I think that's when people can truly be authentic, and that feels like, okay, and I know that there is a story in here, just several, where it's just like, what happened, that debriefing, like what do we do well, what do we not do well, and, the top leaders like, well, you could have done this, but I think having that time of just like taking off the hats, taking off the roles, and just kind of coming as people and just saying, okay, we're all on the same page. We're just gonna, come as humans and be ourselves, and that's where that authenticity part comes from. And I think that's where that vulnerability part can also play in. Is just like we're not here as the CEO and all the different, C-suite people and then the team, where they're just like, I'm not gonna say anything because this guy's here. But it's like, well, if that's modeled, pretty early on, where it's like, okay, you know what? Um, I think it's so important that it is top down, and then that has been talked about, throughout the book, which I think is great. But I think in general, if I were to think like the different cultures that I've been in that have worked so well, it's when the labels and the titles just don't matter. You know what I mean? Where the person who's running the whole program is picking up trash, and just doing those things that you can see like, oh, it really doesn't matter. They just happen to be the owner. They just happen to be the CEO, but they also are, I think the important thing is keeping the humanity. I think sometimes we get lost in things and we forget that, just you take that label and that title off and that person is just like anybody else, and we get kind of caught up in that. I also think that when vulnerability works the best is when I know for me, when I'm like getting ready to be vulnerable, I'm like, and all of this is because I'm looking at myself, not because I'm thinking about the people. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about, is it safe for me, or what are they going to say? What are they going to think about me? And it's me, 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 me. And if I'm thinking, what's my intention sharing this? How can this, what I'm about to share, support the people who are listening right now? That changes my energy altogether. And then I'm not so stuck on the result. You know what I mean? And if they like do some kind of crazy and don't take it well, it's like, well, that's okay. They missed, my intention was this and that. So I'm not taking it like you betrayed me or whatever. But also, I realize that vulnerability is the hardest for me when I'm thinking about myself the most, and I'm not thinking about why am I wanting to bring my vulnerable self into this place right here, right now? If it feels safe and there's trust and all the different things and feel like a sense of belonging, you know. But I think, there needs to, for me anyway, there needs to be just this intention behind it and not just like, I'm going to be vulnerable just so everybody else feels vulnerable. And, I've been in those kind of situations too, where everyone's oversharing and I'm just like, wow, I just don't even know that about you, you know? And so, anyway,
Yeah.
that's some of the things I think about, for me again. And I think because I am rereading Diary of a CEO at the same time, I'm like, this is great, this is great. And then I come back to this one, I'm like, okay. So I'm working towards finding the things that really, and there are definite nuggets in it. I just feel like I'm working more towards it to get that.
So this is what I love about book club. I love this book. And I think, because I analyze this too, I love the CEO, the mindset of the CEO. And I think because he's so young, the way that he wrote that book was like social media posts, where social media posts are most effective if they're a minute or less, because that's the attention span of human beings now, because we've been, with social media and Facebook and YouTube, we've kind of been trained to get short information very, very quickly instead of this guy taking us, on a journey. So I actually love reading the book. And you know, I just think the way that he's going about it is, for me, is held a mirror in front of me. And I like when books make me hold a mirror and actually make me look within. And so one of the things that was a big mirror for me, and I know that I do this, and this is something I try to always correct. So I'm being vulnerable here, and that is interruptions in conversations. And when people are talking, I will sometimes interrupt. And I the reason that I do it, not that it's an excuse, is I have so much stuff in my brain going on at the same time. A lot of times I'm thinking, if I don't say this right now, I'm going to forget. And I sometimes do forget when I'm having the conversation, because it just leaves me, because I have so many other things that I'm thinking about doing next. Like when you guys see me looking down on my phone or whatever, one of you said something that reminded me of something that I have to make a note and I got to put on my calendar. If not, I'm going to forget because there's 50 other things that I have to do. So, but what he said is it is important to avoid interruptions. The smoothness of turn taking, as we have seen, is a powerful indicator of a cohesive group performance. And then he goes on to say interruptions really mess up a conversation and take a conversation off path. And so you don't get the beauty of the conversation. But sometimes it's like some people that I talk to, they're talking about this. I'm thinking about what they're saying, and then they transition to another conversation. Then I'm in that, and I'm just like, and I don't want to take a note on my phone, because it looks rude because I'm on my phone and I'm doing something. So that was big for me. And then another one is good for me is I'm a big energy and vibration guy. When I walk in a room, I can usually tell very, very quickly, one, if I like you, two, if I want to have a conversation with you, and three, if I want to get to know you further. And I always talk about it being energy and vibration, but I also think that posture and expression, which he talks about, are incredibly important. And he says, a social analytics consulting firm, it's the way that we prove that we're in sync with someone. And so I think so many people are oblivious to that. They just come in the room and they're in their own world. They're not vulnerable. They're not really listening or thinking about someone else. And so I really feel like I'm good at that. I feel like I get a lot better. I always feel like my energy is great, and I always concentrate on my energy and my vibration. But people say I walk in the room and I have a presence, right? And I think that presence is that posture and that expression and that energy. So it's a combination of a lot of things that really gives people an attraction to you. And I think one of the things that I just talked to Greg Gray about this a lot is that people were intimidated by me when I would walk in a room. One, because I always had a suit and tie on, the posture expression, and people were like thinking, oh, this guy is, not reachable, not touchable, I'm not on his level or whatever. And then they would talk to me, they're like, holy shit, this guy's down to earth. Right. And so I even worked with Greg and my other mentor. I was like, I want to take that out. And so how do I take that out of the equation where people don't have that feeling? Because I do want to connect with every single person. I want to impact lives. I don't want people to feel that way about me. So, and I think that has to do with posture and expression. And I have to overcompensate for that because of the way that I carry myself. And so it just made me that was kind of an answer for me when I read that part of it. And then
Explains
so
the t-shirts too. Good job, dude.
what's that?
Explains the t-shirts now. So good job. Yeah.
No, that's
Wait,
just
wait,
after the
wait,
gym.
wait, wait,
No,
wait,
no,
come on.
no, no,
Hey,
no. My wife ran out of gas today, so I had to go get a gas can that I didn't know how to work. Thank God my landscaper was here
in a
because
white t-shirt.
it was a complicated,
That explains clothing
get.
because your wife ran out of shirts. You're drawing a
No,
leap.
no, no. No, I didn't get the time to take a shower after the gym because I would spend the last hour and a half going to two gas stations, Home Depot to get a gas can, then back, and then putting
Oh,
gas
dude,
in.
that's amazing. That was
Yeah,
worth the interruption. All right,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we
was
got
it
it written
out
down
of
now. So we
gas?
got that.
Why two
What's
gas
that?
stations?
Because I was going to get a gas can and they didn't sell gas cans at the gas station. So I had to go to Home Depot to the lawn department and get it, and then I had to go back to the gas. Then I couldn't work the gas can because it was all complicated on how you get the gas to come out. So my landscaper's here, thank God. And I was like, hey, I know you know how to work gas can. How do I get the gas to come out of this?
Oh my gosh, this is vulnerability that we needed
Yeah,
today. All
exactly.
right.
Exactly. I never used a gas can because I never ran out of
Yeah.
gas.
Next year,
So,
painting garages, dude.
yeah. Well, so anyways, and then I love what he says about don't shoot the messenger. Um, in fact, um, I'm horrible at this. I'm really, really bad at this because I will Atkins the messenger in a minute if I'm not hearing what I want to hear. I've gotten better at this, but he said what you should do is hug the messenger, which I love, is hug the messenger. And so that's going to be it for me for a very long time is when I'm getting that information is the hug up on the messenger. Justin, are you making a face because you're the messenger typically? Oh,
No, literally, I was
uh,
literally saying that. I'm like, it's me. I'm the messenger getting Atkins.
okay.
Just
That's not true. And I did make a note about Lola. Like, through our relationship, I am I hate giving feedback sometimes if it's going to, be a thing. Like, Lola and I've had conversations as we've grown and I've mentored her and, and it's like I get frustrated. I'm always asking this question of her. I was like, why did that happen? Why did we forget this? How do we, and then the next question always is, how do we make sure that never happens again? Right? Because I just want to make sure that every time we make a mistake or something happens, let's put a process in play that that never happens again. And Lola is, she's just very good at keeping me on track. Um, and there, everyone goes through things in their life where certain, personal things happen, and then the the greatness of people come out, and it's just like you got to figure out how to communicate with people effectively, be vulnerable, and be able to have those conversations because when you see greatness in someone and it's not going exactly the way that you want it to. I don't like conflict, but I'm not afraid to get in conflict, to get to a solution or get to a resolve, even though I don't like it. I would rather not do it. That's why, like, I stopped hiring and firing people in my business because I just hate that face to face, people crying or being upset or whatever. They knew it was coming. So, and I just, I wanted to thank Lola because, in the last year and a half, we've been just killing shit. And it has a lot to do with Justin and Lola keeping me on track because I'm doing, 50 other things and 50 other businesses. And, they're just making sure, I'm not forgetting. Like yesterday, we worked together with content and, I've done content for 6 years. And yesterday we did 36 videos in 4.5 hours, and the only reason we did that is because it was organized, it was systematic, and I didn't have to think, right? Before I'm like, I'm managing Kike, I'm saying, okay, where are we at next? Everything was done. But that all comes from growth, right? And I think people never get through that growth phase because they're afraid to have those vulnerable conversations with one another. And then I think another thing that he said in here that really spoke to me is about laughter. Right? I always try, my way of making people laugh is messing with them, right? So Justin, he's amazing. Lola's amazing. Or we try to find things to laugh about when we're having conversations. And, it's just good to have that laughter. And like, I treat Justin like he's a friend when we're having this conversation. Like I'll mess with Darren, like I'll mess with Justin, and Justin takes it and gives it back in a funny way. And I think that's what businesses need, right? Because everyone is just so serious and so, this without having that connection of laughter, which he said, um, let me see what he said in here.
So as if he's a friend.
Oh, embrace fun. The obvious one is still worth mentioning because laughter is not just laughter, it's the most
Wow.
fundamental sign of connection. And then one of the things that I love that he said in here, it was my favorite thing, is thank you. The comment that he made was thank you for allowing me to coach you. I think that is like such a great, great statement. I don't know if I missed something because Lola's typing and Justin, there's some stuff um, going
I have
on in
a
the
comment
background.
when you're ready, not to interrupt, but I have a comment
Okay,
on
yeah.
that.
And then one last thing, which I think is the most important thing he said in this book, and that is eliminate bad apples. And I've kept bad apples in my organization way too long because I think I can fix them. I think that I can correct it. I think that I can coach them. I think that they have something in them. And I know what that's done to my organization a couple times. And it says the group I studied had extremely low tolerance for bad apples behavior, and perhaps more important, were skilled at naming those behaviors out loud and talking about them. The leaders of the New Zealand All Blacks, the rugby squad, that ranks as one of the most successful teams on the planet, and they achieved that rule by simply just being honest. And I love that. So and again, not everyone is going to love every single book or whatever, but to me, this with the CEO book, it's just two different ways of writing. He takes you on a journey, and the other guy is like an Instagram post. Here's 2 or 3 pages on this topic. It's quick hits, and then boom, you're on to the next quick hit. And I think to younger people, or even us now, because we've been kind of um, brought up in this new world in the last 10 years of quick hits. I think that type of book is very smart that he wrote because people's attention span is like this now, and you get the information and it's just like, and the way he does it, it's like a quick hit. You get that 3 or 4 pages and then you see, and he's done a really good job of titling his chapters. Because every time I go to the next chapter, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna finish here. And then I'd see the next title. Ooh, that's a good one. I want to read that one, and then I'd read the next chapter and then it would take me to, so he did a great job of telling his chapter. So I think that has a lot to do with It's just a difference in the book, but not defending it. I was just saying I love the book. But go ahead, Michelle.
So funny because you hit on all the things that I was like, oh yeah, I underlined that. And I actually had a comment about the laughter, so that was definitely one of my things. Um, Regarding the overdue thank yous, so where it says at the end of each basketball season, for example, Spurs coach Greg Popovich takes each of his star players aside and thanks them for allowing him to coach them. I underlined, I don't know if you can see, I circled the word star because I was like, what about the other players? So for me, I'm hearing, oh, I'm going to take all my star players and say to the stars, hey, thank you for allowing me to coach them. But the team has a whole bunch of other people besides just the one star. So that actually bothered me. I was just like, that's sort of like just talking to one person on the team, on a team.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I love the idea of like, thank you for allowing me to coach you. I think I would have resonated with it more if he had said it takes time to thank the individuals on his team rather than the star players. Because for me, that just felt a little bit disjointed, where it's just like, okay, we're talking about culture, we're talking about community, but this guy's only thanking his stars. So that was a moment that I had a little bit of hiccup from, and that's the only place really. Everything else I was like, ooh, underline and highlight. But that one part, I was just like, hmm. So that's my 2 cents on that part.
So last week I was in my insurance office that I have here in Miami, and what I did to kind of switch that up, because I was coaching, we have like 8 agents in the office, and I individually had them come into my office and role play with me one at a time. And when they left, instead of the opportunity, so thank you for allowing me, I said to them, thank you for the opportunity to coach you. And they almost stopped in their tracks and they were like, well, no, I really appreciate you spending time with me. I was like, well, I appreciate the opportunity to do it. And you could just tell there was this, their eyes just kind of lit up when I said that. It was like, oh, so, and the reason that I thought about is now the next time that I'm sitting down and coaching them, they're going to view it very differently than, because I'm thanking them for the opportunity versus them, thinking that they're coming in there and it's like, I'm scolding or I'm doing whatever. It's just, hey, thanks for the opportunity to coach you. I really appreciate it. So I really love that. That's something I'm going to use, from now on. I can't use it with Lola and Justin because then they know they stole it from the book, but I could use it with other people. They're gonna be like, bullshit, stop, shut up. So there's a book, Lola, that my wife told me about that she is loving right now. We could choose a book, but she said there's this book that we should read at book club. Um, she's in a meeting right now, so if you want, I can text that to the book club chat, and you guys can decide if you want to read that or what did you say, Chris? That would be good. The
Uh,
next 5 moves.
the stillness is key. Looking at the different ones that Lola just threw out there in it, like my vote only because A, I have it. I remember we've read a couple of Ryan
So this
Holiday's
is a
books
selfish,
throughout
a
the
selfish
year.
reason? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
no, it's just to help complete a circle there. Like, yes, I already have it, but two, I've enjoyed Ryan Holiday's book in the past. Ego is the enemy, and then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
obstacle is the way. I
We could
enjoyed
do
both of
that.
those,
So
and so
let's set it up
yeah.
right now. So let's do, I mean, I'll send that book to you guys. You can tell me if you would rather read that first or not. She just was ranting and raving about it. She just started reading it. We could do Stillness is a Key, Your Next 5 Moves, Hidden Potential in this order, Lola. Maybe you guys tell me any different. Think Again, and then Choose Your Enemies Wisely, and then Hidden Potential sounds good too. How to know? Those all sound great. I mean, let's just set the order, what you guys want, and I'll put that other book in there. We'll get all these read the next 4 or 5 months.
And
Are
I'd
you
be
good with
curious
that?
too on that what the one you're talking about, Ron, your friend wrote there, just kind of how that would
Boundaries.
piggyback on boundaries on how that would piggyback on something like this. I mean, it's got my interest peaked a little bit there on just how that might be. But yeah, just and I know we've got a whole bunch of other lists too, and it's been kind of fun. I like how my algorithm kind of figures me out. I've been getting a bunch of different books here now. It's like read these 4 for this, read these 5 for that, and like I've sent a couple to Lola. Like, oh, and what I love most about those reels is like half the time it's like here read these 5 books for whether it's mastering your next money moves. And it's like we've already read 3 of them in book club so far. Like it's fantastic. But anyways, yeah, I like all these as far as the next ones. That's been the great thing about book club. We just They just show up and we read them, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
But and I was gonna say I was cracking up because yes, to my comment there, both Lola and Justin's face when you talked about killing the messenger and just how you come across. Like it was very distinct. I'm glad this video is recorded. I hope you go back and watch it, Jay. And
What'd you say?
again, you're just gonna have to watch the replay for just even that right there. No,
Just when you're Atkinson somebody.
But
Okay.
but to that point where I was going to say is, as I thought of this as you mentioned that, what I really love again about book club beers, you have people on your team, in this case here, Justin and Lola, that are going through this journey of growth, reading these books all together collectively. And as a group, you're all learning together. You're all figuring out, like, all right, where would Jay be coming from now when he's going SEAL Team 6 on you? And let's just have this debrief. Like, don't ever screw that up again. Like, and you're like, oh, he's coming from a place of love because we read the Culture Code and he loved that book. And so, Joe, all kidding aside, I think it's great that you guys can learn together as a team like this. And I think it is only going to speak to the culture that you're raising and what it's obvious to see from an outside perspective, the growth that you guys continue to have. And I think it's because of things exactly like this and those meeting takeaways. And so, yes, the
Yeah, for
thought
sure.
that popped in as you guys were talking about it. But yeah, go back, watch replay, look at both of their faces as soon as you mentioned, oh, don't kill the messenger. It was chef's kiss.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I
Still reading what you're
recommend the
talking
book.
about.
I recommend the book because I spent 24 months every month in Irvine, California, in leadership coaching with John. So, I mean, I know the book. We had to read it. It was a requirement. So I have nothing for business. It's incredible, but just put it in with the wash and whatever we decide that works too.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see. Oh, you know what? So next week we're gonna finish this book. And then I would say that we would take the next 2 weeks off, which is Christmas and New Year's. Do you
That's insane.
oh,
That
that's
close.
I know it's crazy. So I mean we're not gonna meet on those days. We could read and then come back and meet on the sixth if you guys want. We can start the book and then basically on the seventh we'll probably we'll be talking about the book all together, or we could just take those 2 weeks off and then come back and start fresh and read the first 75 pages and talk about it on the seventh. So we have to read 75 pages over 2 weeks.
Yeah, that would be my vote. And also just because there's a bunch of other random books that, yeah, it'd be fun to read. So take these holidays to read whatever other books you want, reread ones, whatever. And then, yeah, on the 7th, whatever the next book is, we come in with the first 75. That's it. And start the new year off right. That would be my
So
vote.
she sent it to me. It's actually a Robin
Okay,
Sharma book.
Robin.
Who will cry when you die?
Ooh.
And that's 5 a.m. Club. And what was the other one of his that we read in here?
The 5 a.m. Club, and then we read
I got a job, guys.
okay.
Bye, Derek.
We're talking next week or we're not?
The Everyday
We are.
Hero, right?
We're finishing
All right.
up this book.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Everyday
Hero
Awesome.
Manifesto.
Yeah. So
See you
this
guys
one's
then.
called Who Will Die When You Cry? Who Will Cry When You Die?
I've enjoyed his books too.
Yeah, Who Will Die When You Cry?
I don't think I want to
Exactly.
start. I don't think I want to start the year off that way. Like,
No, no, I think this one it says life lessons from the monk who sold his Ferrari.
right. No, that's Robin Sharma. Like,
Yeah.
that just sounds like who's gonna die when you cry or cry when you die? Like, yeah, who's
Well, no,
gonna
I
die?
mean, basically, I think it's just talking about being a good person.
All right.
I mean, I think that, but whatever. If you guys want to read that 1 second or whatever, my wife just said it was awesome.
Like, all right. And how good have her book recommendations been? It's your wife. You know her better than anybody. How good? Like, you think this would be a
I
great
think
one?
I think she's a hard critic. You
So
know,
if
she
she's
doesn't.
loving it, it's gonna be really good.
I think so. I mean, I trust when she says something's good. Yeah, I mean,
You're gonna bring her
she's
into book club to give her takeaways for this one? I mean, I finally got my wife. Maybe get yours in. I don't know.
she was doing her own book club and hated the fresher. So I can't have that conversation with her. She's my wife, so I can't talk about like
Can't be
pressure is a
vulnerable with her?
privilege, and it's,
You
oh,
too.
I can, but it's just not going to go anywhere. You're nobody in your own house, and I'm not going to run a marathon. So, I mean, she should be a part of it, actually. It'd be awesome.
I think so. I vote yes.
Crystal, I think you should send a message in our group chat and just be like, it'd be so nice if your wife was in the book club with us. I joined the book club, so I can show her
Yeah,
that.
sounds great.
That would be amazing. Then I can just say, look, Crystal said. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Awesome.
Just decide in the book chat which one you guys want to do. The one she sent out. And then we'll start Christmas. Okay, bye.
All right. Aloha.